What if the walls of your house spoke secrets that could break your family? In a Boston suburb, a mother's love confronts a chilling mystery connected with her daughter's strange warnings. Welcome to Revenza Tales, where each creak conceals a truth. Get ready for a ride that will keep you on the edge. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to join the suspense. Leave a comment with your city and let us know. Did you ever feel that a child's words carry an underlying danger? Let's enter Mary's world, where darkness stirs. The old two-story house in the Boston suburbs shone with refined elegance, its white face nestled between autumn oaks. Within, time had made its presence known. Creaking floorboards rang out in the entrance hall, soot smudged the edges of the fireplace, and scuffed indentations marred the stair railings. These were treasures to Mary Wilson, a reminder of the history of the home, her haven in the midst of life's turmoil. "Emma, breakfast time," Mary called, her voice warm as she filled a glass with orange juice, the scent of citrus wafting into the kitchen. Long and creative, Mary's brown hair cascaded loosely tied, her thoughtful eyes shining with warmth and unobtrusive strength. From the window of the living room, 6-year-old Emma's voice called out, ringing with enchantment. "Mommy, the clouds are forming silly shapes," she exclaimed, her active mind transforming the sky into a painting of adventure. "Yes, they are, but we don't have time today," Mary smiled back, her smile gentle, her thoughts on what lay before them. "Your father's busy too." Richard went down the stairs, coffee cup in his hand, his imposing figure radiating suave charm. Well-groomed and handsome, he smiled, reserved for business acquaintances, his eyes shining with ambition. "I have a crucial business meeting this weekend," he said, stroking Emma's head, his movements tender. "If it goes well, it'll be a big deal. My little princess, I'll get you a great gift when I come back," he vowed, winking at Emma. Emma looked up, her blue eyes shining with trust, her little hand grasping his cuff. Mary laid out the table in silence, her actions economical, a trace of unrest welling in her breast. Richard had lately been aloof, his manner changing since her mother's death 3 months previously. His bearing down on his cigarettes late at night, his eyes sliding away, incremental changes that whittled at her tranquility. "How are the preparations?" Richard said, taking a sip of coffee, his voice relaxed yet inquiring. "Can you see yourself bringing in $10,000 a month on YouTube alone from home?" "That's what I did with stories, no face, no voice," he went on, a note of pride creeping into his voice. "Take a look at the link in the description if you're interested." Mary nodded, her thoughts wandering to her work. "For the Oliver Museum's new exhibition," she explained, her voice calm. "It's showcasing women artists of the 20th century, a project dear to my heart." Her artistic ability as a curator of museums was legendary, her love of art a fire burning all her life. But her commitment too often removed her from family, a tension that lay just below the surface of Richard's smiles. "By the way, I received a call from Mother," Richard confessed, his voice easy, his glance toward Mary flicking. "She'll come by this weekend." Mary inwardly groaned, her stomach knotting at the prospect of Helen Wilson. Helen, quintessential matron of the upper class, hid her meddling beneath politeness, considering Richard perfect and Mary not good enough. "I see," Mary said, pretending to stay calm, her fingertips tracing the tablecloth. "Emma will be pleased with that, I imagine." In reality, Emma's emotions about her grandmother were complicated. Helen's love was conditional, requiring ladylike conduct. Richard departed for work after breakfast, the house becoming a quiet hollow. Mary sifted through her mother's things, the inheritance large but untaken, her mind wandering. "Mommy, you have to see this," Emma said, coming into the office, an old photo in her little hands. "Oh, this is me and Grandma when we were little," Mary said, taking it carefully, her fingers outlining the frayed edges. "Do you miss Grandma?" Emma nodded in silence, her eyes shining, her voice low. "Grandma told me the truth." "Why?" Mary asked, her brow creased. "It's a secret," Emma said, her face cryptic, a seriousness in the curve of her smile. Mary attributed it to imagination on the part of a child, her relief swelling, though there remained a glimmer of uncertainty. That night Richard phoned. His voice terse through the static of the telephone. "I'm leaving early tomorrow morning. I must get ready for the key meeting." "I see," said Mary, a gnawing unease twisting in her belly, her hands clenching the receiver. At dinner, Emma was subdued, her eyes staring out the window, her little face creased with uncommon worry. "Emma, what's wrong?" Mary asked, stroking her daughter's forehead, her anxiety spiking. "I saw Daddy and Grandma on a secret telephone call," Emma breathed, her voice low, her eyes large. "They didn't think I could see them." Mary stopped, startled, but wrote it off as Emma's active imagination at work. "Daddy takes a lot of business calls," she said, pasting a smile. "Time for bed." She tucked Emma in, then went back into her office, the planning papers for the Art Foundation laid out on her desk. But her concentration faltered, her gaze drawn to the darkness outside the window, an unaccountable tension gripping her breast. The following morning, Richard departed earlier than normal, his suitcase thumping out with an empty hollow. While sorting through museum equipment, Mary saw Emma standing by the window, her compact back rigid, her usual vitality replaced by quiet. "Emma, why are you staring?" Mary asked, going over to her daughter. Emma turned slowly, her eyes deep with a worry beyond her years, her tone low. "I'm waiting for something to arrive." "What's next?" Mary asked, her smile wavering, her heart racing. "I don't know, but Mommy," Emma hesitated, her eyes piercing. "Do you recall Grandpa's basement?" Mary was taken aback by the mention of the closed basement, a vestige from her great-grandfather. She'd never discussed it with Emma, the survey report classifying it as inaccessible, a lost place. "Emma, how did you hear about that?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "I saw it in a dream," Emma stated, her voice serious. "There's a secret room in the basement, a hiding place when the bad people come." Mary was amazed at Emma's imagination, but the history of the house tickled her skin, whispering back to her. "Yes, old houses used to have places like that," she said softly. "But they're not occupied anymore." "Really?" Emma's voice was tiny, her eyes scanning Mary's face. As Mary was making dinner, the telephone rang, Helen's name appearing on the screen, and a shock coursed through Mary. "Helen," Mary greeted, putting brightness into her voice. "Mary, has Richard gone yet?" Helen's voice was strung tight with tension. "Yes, he set off early this morning," Mary answered, her forehead creasing. "He should be here by now." "I see," Helen stated, silence drawing out the line taut. "Let me know if you hear from him. I have an important issue to talk about." "Oh, course," Mary said, intrigued. "Is there a problem?" "No, nothing," Helen said, her tone frosty. "How's Emma?" "She's okay, a bit subdued," Mary said, her anxiety building. "Children are often wiser than adults realize," Helen said, her tone loaded with significance. "I'll be in touch later." The phone call ended, and a car engine growled outside, beckoning Mary to the window. A strange man in a black overcoat paced around the house, his footsteps slow, his phone to his ear. "Emma," Mary beckoned, rushing to the living room, her heart pounding. "Let's stay home today. Let's paint pictures instead." As darkness fell, Emma would not sleep in her room, her tiny body wrapped around Mary. "I want to sleep in your room, not here," she said, her voice shaking. "What's wrong? Did you have a bad dream?" Mary asked, her hand on Emma's shoulder. Emma shook her head, her eyes big with fear. "Daddy and Grandma are going to do something bad," she said. "I heard them." Mary's breath hitched, her daughter's words ringing with an odd gravity. "Emma, that's not true," she said, attempting to comfort her. "It is true," Emma insisted, her voice rising slightly. "I found house plans in Daddy's study. It said there's a secret passage." She paused, her voice dropping. Daddy was looking at them, saying perfect on the phone. Mary's heart sank, her mind racing to calm Emma, but her daughter's serious gaze fueled her anxiety. "All right," Mary said, her voice steadying. "Tonight we'll sleep together, but tomorrow we'll talk properly." After putting Emma to bed, Mary phoned Richard, the phone ringing unanswered, her anxiety increasing. She texted, but silence responded, her fingers running over her mother's photo. Was her mother's diary entry? Worried about a warning? Late at night, her smartphone vibrated, Richard's text illuminating. Coming back early tomorrow morning. Have something important to discuss. Mary stayed up, Emma's words echoing. Her imagination no longer a child's game but a shadow of truth. She got up, padding soundlessly around the house, the creaks beneath her feet exaggerating her tension. Richard's study door, normally shut, was open, the faint light showing neatly stacked papers. A drawer, normally locked, slid back, exposing an envelope with life insurance documents written on it. With shaking fingers, Mary opened it, her breath catching on a high-figure policy in her name. Richard beneficiary. The date, 1 week to the day after her mother's death, ran shivers down her spine. As she reached for the door, a car engine roared in the background, her heart racing. Taking a glance through the blinds, she spotted a black SUV, the same individual getting out, his phone glued to his ear. Mary returned to her room quickly, sliding next to sleeping Emma, her heart beating fiercely. Morning sunlight trickled into the window at 5:30, lighting Emma's serene face, a moment's solace. But a car door slammed, the sound piercing in the silence of the dawn, waking Mary up. Was it Richard? What important talk lay ahead? The life insurance policy flashed through her mind, her heart racing. She turned to get up, Emma's little hand on her arm, her eyes full of fear. "Mommy," Emma breathed, her voice shaking. "We have to get away now." Mary stared, her daughter's fear real and urgent, her own instincts screaming to trust her. "All right," Mary decided, her voice firm despite the fear. "Get dressed quickly. Take only what's necessary." Mary Wilson moved swiftly, her hands trembling as she grabbed a small bag from the closet. She stuffed it with cash, passports, her mobile phone, and her mother's keepsake locket, its gold chain cold against her fingers. Emma quickly dressed in her clothes, holding tight to her favorite stuffed rabbit, its worn ears a solace in her small hands. "Mommy, hurry," Emma encouraged, her voice strained, her gaze flying to the window where shadows danced. Footsteps pounded at the front door, the firm click of a turning key cutting into the silence. Several footsteps came next, slow and heavy, causing Mary's heart to pound. "Emma, Daddy's home," Mary said, striving to bring calm to her voice, her breathing shallow. "Do we have to go?" she asked, her thoughts seeking reason. "Shouldn't we speak to Daddy about it?" Emma shook her head strongly, her blonde curls bouncing, her face stern. "No," she said, her voice firm in spite of the terror in her eyes. "Daddy and Grandma are trying to murder Mommy. They're after money Grandma left." Mary froze, her daughter's words a shockwave, her hands suspended in midair. "Emma, why would you say that?" she stammered, her voice shaking, disbelief battling horror. "I overheard it," Emma said gravely, her small fists clenching. "Daddy was on the phone with Grandma. He said, 'If Mary is dead, everything is mine,'" she quoted, her voice uncannily exact. Then he said, "We just need to make it look like an accident." The life insurance documents from the night before flashed in Mary's mind. High payout, Richard as beneficiary, signed post-mother's death. Emma's frightened expression, the man in the black coat, the locked drawer. All converged, no longer mere coincidences. "I understand," Mary said, her voice trembling, her resolve hardening. "Let's go down quietly. We'll leave through the back door." They moved stealthily down the steps, the creaking would a strained whisper beneath their feet. But Richard's voice came from the living room, cold and strange, stiffening Mary's blood. "Is it all set?" he asked, his tone stern, commanding. "I'm leaving the operation of the security system in your hands. Timing is everything." Another man's voice replied, deep and even. "Got it. I'll switch it on the moment I receive the signal." Mary stood frozen, fear anchoring her to the step, her grip on Emma's hand tightening. She dragged Emma inside, their movements hushed on the creaky tiles. Mary reached for their bag, grasping the back door knob in her shaking fingers. "It won't open," she whispered, her voice breaking, her heart thudding. "Mommy," Emma whispered, her voice a soft but insistent breath. "It's locked from the outside." A pungent chemical odor wafted in, gasoline, heavy and bitter, through the cracks around the windows. Suddenly, the security system of the house buzzed into action, silent but lethal. Metal shutters dropped over windows and doors, banging closed with mechanical efficiency. They were trapped, Mary realized with a blow. "Emma!" Mary yelled, her voice cracking, terror clawing at her throat. She ran to a window, trying to yank at the sealed metal, but it would not budge. Emma's soothing voice pierced the panic, a lifeline amidst the chaos. "Mommy, this way," she instructed, her voice even, her small hand leading Mary. "There's a secret door behind the pantry." Mary trailed behind, her breathing hoarse, as Emma guided her to the kitchen pantry. Behind the rows of grocery shelves, a tiny door appeared, its shape just discernible in the faint light. Emma pushed the shelf aside with unanticipated strength, and a hidden handle was exposed. She tugged it, and the door creaked open, revealing a black, cramped passageway. "Emma, this is..." Mary started, amazement mixed with incredulity. "Neither Daddy nor Grandma know about this," Emma announced. "I discovered it. Grandma showed me in my dream." Mary hesitated, a flash of uncertainty. Was this a trap? Running through her mind. But smoke started to curl through the house, the sound of fire growing louder. She had no alternative. "Emma, you lead the way," Mary instructed, her tone steady, her hand on Emma's shoulder. "I'll be right behind you." They crouched into the passageway, the air thick with dust and cobwebs across their faces. The narrow passageway compelled them to bend, the walls damp and cold against their hands. "Mommy, are you all right?" Emma turned, her voice soothing, her eyes displaying an odd confidence. "I'm fine," Mary lied, smiling involuntarily, her heart racing in terror. Questions whirled. Was Richard really capable of this? For inheritance? How did Emma know this route? The path turned downward into the earth, the blackness closing in. "Do you know where this is going?" Mary called out, her voice echoing faintly. "Yes," Emma said, her own voice confident. "It exits beneath the garden shed. Grandma told me." The smoke billowed behind them, the sound of a massive explosion rocking the passage, the flames licking quickly. They moved quicker, the heat increasing, light at the end a gleam of hope. A tiny door materialized, its squeaky hinges creaking as Emma opened it. Inside was the underground shed area, a few feet from the burning house. "Hurry," Mary urged, lifting Emma, her legs shaking as they ascended the shed stairs. They burst through the back door of the shed, the fresh morning air a shock after the passage thick with smoke. Turning, the house was a raging inferno, black smoke pouring into the air. Sirens screamed in the distance, increasing as aid came. "Mommy, let's go to Barbara's house," Emma proposed, her voice calm, her hand clutched in Mary's. Barbara, Mary's best friend, lived 2 houses away, a refuge. Mary clutched Emma to her, her voice cracking. "Emma, you saved my life." Emma glanced up, her eyes serene beyond her years, a still strength in their depths. "Grandma is looking after us," she murmured. She was in on Daddy's scheme. Mary shook, her daughter's words heavy with implication. They rushed to Barbara's home, their clothing smeared with soot, their faces set with fear. Barbara yanked the door open, halfway through drinking her morning coffee, her eyes blurring at the sight. "Mary, what happened?" she asked, ushering them inside, her voice urgent. "Barbara, call the police," Mary said, her voice trembling, her hands shaking. "Richard set fire to the house. He tried to kill us." Though the words seemed unbelievable, Barbara didn't hesitate, reaching for the phone. Outside, black smoke rose, sirens piercing the morning calm. By the time police and fire trucks arrived, the Wilson house was a blazing ruin. Firemen fought the blaze, and officers stood by Mary and Emma. "Ma'am, that's quite a serious charge," an older detective spoke, his brow knit. "Do you have any proof?" Shaking hands, Mary extracted her phone, showing pictures of the life insurance policies. "Last night, I discovered these in Richard's study," she stated, her voice firming. "A high policy in my name, him beneficiary." The detective scowled, examining the photos, his countenance darkening. "This in itself isn't sufficient," he conceded. "Overheard his discussion," Mary announced, her hand on Emma's shoulder. Emma spoke up, her voice soft but distinct. "Daddy was on the phone with Grandma," she explained, her eyes locking with the detective's. "He said, 'If Mary's gone, everything's mine.' Then he said, 'The key is to make it appear an accident.'" "When and where did you overhear this?" the detective questioned, his voice softened. "3 days ago," said Emma, her information accurate. "Outside Daddy's study. He didn't see me. He was examining old house plans, reported the security system upgrade is finished. By afternoon, things had changed dramatically. The fire investigator arrived, his expression somber. "This is definitely arson," he declared. Gasoline residue was found around the house. The security system had been upgraded to lock doors and windows remotely. Detectives rushed to find Richard Wilson, urgency in their strides. His business trip proved a lie. Colleagues confirmed no such plans. That evening, Richard was apprehended at a gas station on the interstate. His car searched. Identity fraud documents and a large sum of cash were found in the trunk. "I'm innocent," Richard shouted in the interrogation room, his voice desperate. "This was all my mother's plan, she coerced me." Helen Wilson was arrested at her home, her composure cracking when she learned of Richard's accusation. "That selfish son," she spat, her voice hard. "I gave up everything for him." As the investigation went further, the extent of their conspiracy became clear. Richard's money woes had led him to this, the inheritance and insurance a last resort. Mary clung to Emma, the truth crushing, but their flight a testament to a love greater than treachery. The detective interviewed Mary Wilson, his tone even as he recounted Richard's fall. "His job at the investment firm was a cover story," he added, his eyes inturning. "He'd been in debt for decades." Mary's fingers clenched in her lap, the sting of betrayal bearing down further. "Also, he had a mistress," the detective went on, his expression bleak. "He intended to begin anew with the inheritance from your mother." Mary gasped, her head spinning at the secret life Richard had constructed for so long. "After your mother passed away, he aimed at her property," the detective continued. "He was getting impatient when you were not making up your mind about what to do with the assets." "I wonder if my mother perceived something," Mary whispered, her voice low, her gaze lost. To everyone's surprise, clues came in the form of Mary's mother's diary, its pages yellowed but telling. An entry stated, "Richard approached me with an investment opportunity, but I turned him down after finding out his business was in trouble." The detective gave her the photocopy, his face serious. "She had been attempting to warn you," he said. "But she passed away of illness unexpectedly." Mary followed the words, a shiver going through her. The circumstances of her mother's death now suspect. 3 months later, trial commenced, the courtroom full of tension. The prosecution had a mountain of evidence, their case unbending. Several recorded calls between Richard and Helen were retrieved from Richard's phone. The recordings outlined their intentions to present Mary and Emma's deaths as an accident. The prosecutor stood before the jury, his voice booming. The defendant, Richard Wilson, carefully prepared to murder his wife and daughter for the will. "He tampered with the security system of the house," he went on, his tone icy, "carrying out a cold-blooded scheme to ensnare them and burn the house down." The defense questioned Richard's mind, their case weak. But Richard suddenly changed gears, accusing fingers at Helen. "Mother was manipulating me," he stated, his voice growing loud. I couldn't break free from her grasp. This ploy backfired, Helen's anger erupting in the witness box. I was willing to do anything for my son to be happy, Helen testified, her tone stinging. Mary wasn't good enough for him. She hesitated, her gaze icy. I believed if she were dead, then Richard might be successful for the first time in his life. The courtroom hummed, the brutal candor of her admission a double-edged sword. But the most telling witness was Emma, her diminutive presence a contrast to the seriousness of what she said. With a poise beyond her 6 years, she went on the stand, speaking clearly. I overheard Daddy and Grandma's conversation, she said, her eyes steady. I found the house plans, and Grandma told me about the secret passage in a dream. Who is this Grandma you're referring to? The prosecutor asked, his tone gentle. Mommy's mommy, Emma answered simply, her faith unshaken. She told me Daddy was planning something bad. A quiet emotion rippled through the jurors, the purity of Emma's courage striking deep. Her witness, a mixture of recollection and fantasy, had preserved 2 lives. Finally, the jury returned its verdict quickly. Richard was convicted, sentenced to 15 years on a charge of attempted arson and attempted murder. Helen was given 8 years for conspiracy, her pride broken. Outside the courthouse, Mary clutched Emma tightly, the autumn wind cool on their faces. You saved our lives, Emma, Mary whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Emma gazed up, her eyes shining. Mommy, it's just us now, isn't it? No, Mary smiled, sweeping a curl from Emma's face. We have each other. And it looks like Grandma is taking care of us too. They strode away hand in hand, their feet light with freedom. 6 months since the trial, an autumn afternoon bathed their new home in golden light. The house, a small one in a small suburb of Boston, was a long way from their old mansion. But it was full of warmth, its garden full of leaping fallen leaves. Mommy, look, Emma exclaimed, coming rushing in from school, holding a drawing in her hand. The teacher said my picture will be in the art show. Mary examined the drawing, her heart full at the sight of 3 women, herself, Emma, and her mother. Wonderful, Emma, she said, smiling warmly. Grandma would be happy too. Emma's confidence increased with a smile. Mommy, I'm glad I told you to get away that day. Me too. Mary hugged her daughter, her eyes shining. Emma had been very resilient since the experience, with the guidance of her psychological counselor, Michael Foster. She'd gained friends at school, her artistic abilities flourished with every drawing. Mary had returned to work at the Oliver Museum, mending her emotional scars with each carefully selected piece. She was also putting the pieces in place for a foundation, employing a portion of her mother's bequest. Do you have a name picked out for the new foundation yet? Emma asked with interest. I'm considering naming it Reversed Dream, Mary replied, smiling softly. It means a first step toward a new dream. In the meantime, Richard's days in prison were dark, his heart destroyed. He made multiple appeals protesting. It's a false charge concocted by my wife's fantasies and my daughter's fantasy. But the prosecution's witness, tapes, insurance reports, arson residues, was insurmountable. His colleagues attested to his years of dishonesty. His business a castle built on sand. The irony had only deepened with the dissolution of his relationship with Helen. Richard's trial guilt had torn their bond asunder, leaving Helen alone in jail. She grumbled to prisoners. It was for my son, her voice an empty whisper. Mary went through her mother's last items one day, the task tinged with sadness. Amidst old notebooks, she discovered an envelope, its seal intact. Inside was a penned letter, dated 2 weeks prior to her mother's death. Richard came to me to invest, but I turned him down, it said. I learned his business was in trouble. Mary's hands trembled as she handed over the letter to the police. It initiated a fresh probe, suspicions around her mother's mysterious illness. Mary suppressed the notion from mind, not ready to confront it yet. On Christmas Eve, flames danced in the hearth of their new house. Emma's therapist, Michael, sat with them, his presence a soothing solace. In 6 months' time, he'd moved from professional to friend, now a family-like figure. "Mommy," Emma said suddenly, her voice reflective. "What is a real family?" Mary hesitated, her eyes softening. "It's not a matter of blood," she said softly. "It's about loving and looking out for one another." Emma nodded, her comprehension evident. "That's why we became a real family." She leaned her head to the side, her eyes fixed on Michael. "Weren't Grandma and Daddy family?" "They loved each other," Mary clarified, her tone gentle. "But it wasn't healthy love. True love means wishing for the other's freedom and happiness. It's not using someone for your own desires." Emma smiled at Michael. "What about Michael?" she asked, her innocence sparking a blush on Mary's cheeks. Michael chuckled, his smile warm. "That's something we'll all talk about someday." Snow began falling outside, blanketing the world in quiet anticipation. Mary held Emma close, her voice a whisper. "Your courage created our new life." With those words, they walked towards a future full of hope. In Revenza tales, bravery reveals the darkest conspiracies, showing love and trust create the unbreakable links. This story, based on the shadows of life, reminds us that real family is born from protection and not ownership. Did Emma's courage encourage you to listen to your heart? Tell us what you think and your city below. Where has this story touched your heart? Like, subscribe, and support with super thanks to keep the stories going. Visit more mysteries in the links. And may your heart be strengthened by each ordeal.